Boom, we got the red dot. Here we are. Hey, everybody. This is The Fall Line with Chaos and Company, and I am here with Angelo Ross, my partner. And yes, it's just Angelo and I tonight. And the reason for that is because it is all focused on Angelo's experience as he tripped about 1,000 hours to Finland, about 1,000 hours back, all kinds of airports. And I think he spent the whole week just in the Helsinki airport, and he's going to let us know about that. But it was a pretty impressive watching on Facebook and that. So we wanted to chat about that. And yes, he took his lovely Blizzard skis over there in Technica boots, one of our friends of the podcast. So we want to definitely thank Blizzard and Technica for helping him out. Your stuff got there, right?
Well, that's funny. I took them, but they didn't get there, right? They didn't get there. There were a lot of folks skis who didn't show up, and mine was one of them. And long story short, I finally found out where they were on Wednesday, and they sat in Heathrow Airport until Thursday. And I was like joking, like they looked at the itinerary and they're like, man, it's cold up there. We're just going to stay here in London. So anyway, long story short, I got them on Friday morning and was able to ski them Friday and Saturday. But that was a pain.
Oh, man. So what did you do for skis that you didn't go on Nordica?
No. I wouldn't give Troy the pleasure. No, I rented. I went to one of the little shops in the village and rented a pair of Head E Titans, which is a great ski. 400 foot. When I was skiing Head product, I was on that ski, so it was real familiar. And yeah, I'd find time on that board. They weren't as tuned up as my HRCs, but they did the job. Yeah.
Well, it's a good thing you had your boots with you.
Well, yeah, and then my trip to Finland from when I left the house, I had to drive 4 hours to Baltimore to catch my flight, and I'm pulling into the parking lot in Baltimore and get a text that my flight had been delayed. So it started right away. But anyway, yeah. So I carried my boots with me, and my by the time I got to Katila in Finland near the event, it was 38 hours of travel. And so around hour 35, I was getting pretty tired of carrying ski boots around. But around hour 39, when I realized my skis weren't there, I was pretty glad I had my boots in my hands.
Yeah, that would have been tough to get Nick to come all the way over. Hey, Nick, man, let me call up Nick's boot footing. Hey, Nick, can you or George come on over? I need to get some new footbeds, and these rental boots are going to hurt, man.
Yeah, no. So yeah, I had my boots with me, thankfully.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Well, yeah, I do want to, as we start the podcast here, as I did, I want to thank, it's been ski season for me coming to pretty much to a close. Skis are inside, boots are inside, and they'll be probably staying inside. I doubt I'm going to get another day on snow. And, but you've still got some time on it at National Academy, so you can be out there and have the equipment shine. But thanks to Blizzard Technica for another great winter season. And they're still with us for the whole summer, so it's not like it's over. But definitely as skiing in the east here starts to wind down for most of us. And then Nick's boot fitting has been awesome. I don't know how Nick goes a little while. I think Nick boot. I'll have to ask Nick when he shuts down the shop for summer, because he must go right through in here. I think he goes pretty much till Mount Snow stays open, at least, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and then we'll be hopefully rolling around some rollerblades here soon is kind of the plan, and then hopefully hook up with Miles for something late summer, fall to do something with him, with the crew out there. Anybody's going to sign up, we'll have to see what's going on Miles' schedule on the rollerblade side. But that'll be fun. But hey, 39 hours, man. Now, so where did you sleep? Right in the airport? I mean, you tried to sleep on the plane, I bet, but where was all the sleeping going on?
Yeah, you know what the wildest thing is? When you finally arrive at your destination after travel like that, you come to the realization that you've only either sat or stood for the last day and a half. Finally stretch out horizontal. It feels so good. But I don't know. I caught cat naps on planes, but I did end up I rolled into Helsinki right around 11:30 p.m. or midnight. I can't remember what day is which, but anyway, I roll in there at say it was 11:30 p.m. and I had like a 7.5 hour layover in the Helsinki airport, but it was empty. Like everything's closed. And so I'm basically in that airport by myself, like wide awake because it's 7 a.m. at home, you know? And so like, I'm like, well, I'll read, and then that gets old, and then I'll watch shit I downloaded on my phone, then that gets old. So I'm like doing laps in the Helsinki airport, and there are like 6 other sorry souls like laying around on these benches. But yeah, that was crazy. So I'm there all night with the opportunity to sleep, but I was like a quarter of a day off in my my circadian rhythm, so I couldn't catch a wink.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh man. And everybody kind of, it seemed like everything I saw on Facebook and all the texts I got from the crew, they were all flying. Everybody flew through Helsinki. Everyone kind of went there. And then how far was it from there to Levi?
Well, they're not far. It's only like an hour and a half flight from Helsinki to up to Kittila is the airport, which is only a 15-minute drive from Levi, which is the resort. But some people went through Belgium. Like I think Pete went through Munich. Some people went through Germany. Some people went through France. But a lot of the folks like from the Eastern US ended up going through Helsinki, but I didn't see any of them. I kind of expected to roll into Helsinki and see a whole crew there, but nobody happened to be on the flight that I was on.
Yeah, geez. So what was it like when you landed up near Levi, and what did it look like? And from looking at the photos from Levi, there wasn't a lot of trees, man.
No, well, yeah. So when I got into Helsinki, it was dark, obviously, and then around 6 a.m. or so, the sun started to come up, and I started to see people, and they were mostly like airline crew and whatnot rolling into work. So we left Helsinki. It was like 7:30 a.m. local time when we left there, and arrived up to Kittila at like 9 a.m. or something like that. And like Helsinki was like having spring-like weather. It wasn't cold. It wasn't snowy. Like it was in the mid 50s, I think, was their high that day. But man, you get off the plane in Kittila and you are in the Arctic, and you're like 100 miles above the Arctic Circle, and you get off the plane and it is like winter, like with drifts and like snow and cold and the whole bit. Yeah, totally different. And the landscape's pretty beautiful. It's mostly flat in that far north in Finland. Is pretty flat. There are a lot of lakes. There's a lot of water, and the mountains are, to my knowledge, and I think this is true, they're left over from the glaciers. Like it's all glacial, like rips and tears in the land that sort of gotten rounded by the wind and whatnot. And there are a lot of trees, and they're all coniferous trees. It's all evergreens. Obviously, like that's the kind of vegetation you have up there. So it's basically swampy land with, and I heard the bugs in the summer just really terrible, but the mountains are not very tall. Levi, the vertical at Levi is only 1,066 feet, but there aren't trees. Like you're above tree line, and I have to imagine it's not for a lack of water. Like there is a ton of snow, so when that finally does melt, if it ever melts all the way down, like the soil is saturated. But I have to imagine it's pretty nutrient poor soil, and the wind is brutal. So it's kind of like above tree line skiing, even though it's not that much elevation. It's 1,066 feet of vertical, and I think the top elevation is like 1,750. It's not very much elevation at all.
No. And so after all that time of, and all the time to get there, and then I know it was a long time coming home, almost at least about at the same time. And I guarantee it was worth it though, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, it was, that whole experience was a gift. Like I have to thank Amanda, first of all, for just being cool enough with me to let me go do something like that, and to sacrifice the things that when you're by yourself taking care of like 2 kids and 4 dogs and 3 cats and 9 chickens and all that stuff, it's a lot of work. So I appreciate that from her. And then the experience itself is like it's irreplaceable, and it reminds, you asked me that question, and I was thinking about like the experience of being there versus the experience of seeing it on YouTube. And I remember like when I left public education in 2018, it took me about 2.5 months to really come to the decision. And then I remember we were sitting on the bed and I was like, I just looked at her and I said, I'm done. And she looked at me and said, where do you want to go? So we ended up taking 2 weeks and going to Ireland a couple of months after I retired. And like cruising Ireland was awesome. But one of the most like visceral experiences I had there was we went to the Jameson distillery. And when you're in Ireland, in a lot of parts of like the rural parts, there's this smell in the air. It's like a real low key sulfur smell. And it's how they heat their homes. They burn sod. We burn coal in southwestern Pennsylvania. And in Ireland, they burn sod. But it has this real distinct, like, sulfury smell. So you're aware of it while you're in the country. And you could read about that, but until you smell it, you don't really know what it means. But we were in the Jameson distillery and we did a taste test. They're pretty slick about how they set up the taste test. You have three tastings, and the first is a single distilled Jack Daniels, and the second is a double distilled Dewar's from Scotland, and the third shot is this triple distilled Jameson from the country. And I remember taking that shot on the tour, and it tastes like the peat smells. Like it's even hard to explain, but when you drink it, you can taste the landscape and it like hits you right in the brainstem. And it's like something, every time I taste Jameson now, I'll never be able to taste it without thinking about Ireland and that experience. And that's how Interski was. Like you can watch it on YouTube, you can read about it in 32 degrees, but until you're standing there and you see the colors of all the team uniforms and you hear the accents and you're dealing with the language barriers and that kind of thing, and you're eating freaking reindeer at the buffets and like just everything that comes with being there, you just can't, if you're not there, you can't really experience it. So your question was the travel. Absolutely, the travel was worth it, because that's just something that I hope I remember till the end of my days. It was really special. And I will tell you this, one of the coolest things I experienced when I really realized where I was, like on the planet. The sun comes up, about at 6:30 or 7 a.m., whatever. And it comes up at this really low angle, but it never gets to high noon. Like when it's noon in a temperate zone, there are no shadows because the sun's shining right down from the top. But all day long up there, the shadows are super long. And then you look at your watch and it's lunchtime, but the sun's only about 20 or 25 degrees off the horizon. And you're like, oh my God, like I'm really on the top of this spinning ball, and then it takes a really long time to go down, and these long shadows all day long just kind of like sort of like move across the snow surface. So you go outside after lunch and it's 1 p.m., but you feel like it's 4 p.m. because of how long the shadows are. And it's just, like that kind of stuff I didn't really anticipate. Yeah. Really.
Watching the pictures and that, I mean, everyone's going to Interski. It's big education in that. And I know everyone had that, and we're going to chat about that, but you could tell that just where it was on the planet and the experience, so many people were enjoying that, which was great to see them get out. A lot of the photos were of that stuff, not just the educational piece of, our ski teaching, snowboard teaching. Mm-hmm. It was really out there in the land and the country and more than just Europe. It was really kind of cool seeing stuff of Finland and the near the North Pole.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's, as a former ecology teacher, I was really kind of cued into the the landscape, the biome itself, the amount of energy available from the sunlight and the amount of water available from the precipitation. But I was with Harold Smith, who has a doctorate in geology. So, I mean, like, he was my roommate. And if people don't know Harold, he's an alpine and children's examiner from Maine, works with David Attitash. And like, this is a knowledgeable guy. And we're like, dorking out on the science part of it. And then like, one of the most special parts of the whole thing is I arrived on Saturday. Sunday was a free day, but the American delegation led by our new CEO, Peggy, Mike Porter and Jennifer Simpson were given tours of the area. Like, they had been there and they knew where the chairlifts were and that sort of thing. So I end up spending the day on Sunday with Mike Porter. And anybody who's met Porter knows how special that is in and of itself. But Porter's been in that area, like Europe and so much. And he's just such a brilliant person. He's given us basically a history and cultural lesson on the Sami people, who are the indigenous Europeans who inhabit northern Norway, Denmark, Finland, and some of the parts of Western Russia. And they're still herding reindeer and subsidized by the government. They have free range to go in any of those countries because it's like their homeland, like their native homeland, and then you, you hear these stories from Porter, and like, you start to dig into some of the stuff yourself. And I learned that Lapland, which is what that area is called, the northern parts of those countries is Lapland, by the Sami people, by the indigenous people, is kind of a derogatory, because Lap is Scandinavian for something along the lines of the equivalent of imbecile. So they like to use that word to an indigenous person is pretty insulting. But that parallels kind of the history of our country, where we basically committed genocide against the native people who were here, that's you learn that stuff when you're in those spots.
Yeah, it's cool. I figured Harold would be into it with his geology background and science background. So he's always got neat stuff about the landscape and that. So, I mean, every experience we go into, we have our expectations. We have what we expect. Then the things happen that we didn't expect. And then there's stuff that we just had no idea, like in no way we thought could happen. But, what were some of your expectations going in? And then, let us know, what surprised you, what you didn't expect, and then what shocked you.
Yeah. Well, I had spoken to people who had been to other skis, obviously people from our national team, and talked to Kathy Brennan beforehand about just some of the logistics of it. So what I did expect was to show up to these workshops and to ski with relatively large groups of other skiers. And I expected to not get much feedback, because it's really not a clinic. It's more of a presentation, based on what the topic was. So and that stuff happened. So that wasn't a surprise, but one of the surprises was how few delegates were there. So when you go to an Interski event, you're either there basically as a national team member, or you're there as a delegate. And delegates are folks like me and Harold and Kathy and Sue Kramer, who was there, who pay for the event, pay for the travel. You incur that cost, and you go as basically an observer or a participant. And it was really surprising to me how few delegates were there. So my first sessions on Monday were with the Australian team, and I roll into my first session, and there might have been, let's say there were 20 participants in the session, and Tom Langtree from the Australian national team was leading the session on the Australian technical system, their technical model. And I look around the group, and I was the only person in the group who wasn't on a national team. And so I'm like, oh, all right, this is on. It's really, really high end skiing, and it was top to bottom, and it was fast, and it was precision. And I think in my brain, I expected there to be more people like me, but who weren't in a national team uniform. But so that was surprising,
Yeah.
But nothing was really shocking, like you say. But I think the surprising part was how high end the skiing was, and I know there were delegates there from the U.S. and from other countries that really struggled with the speed, with that pacing, and then for most of the sessions you were paired up with somebody, so you're giving each other feedback, and that's pretty high end feedback to give somebody. You're talking about turn shape or what's going on with the flexion versus extension in transition, and you're watching people who are tremendous skiers and athletes. That's a lot to ask for a lot of folks.
Yeah, it was neat. I listened to George Thomas had Maureen Drummy and Tina Buckley on one of his, and if folks want to listen, they can go to the PSA national website and listen to it's on with the Sun Cloud, wherever he does the podcast right there. And if you're a member, it's pretty easy to find. I think you can get on there without being a member too to see those, but or listen to them. But yeah, Maureen was saying that one of the things when she was talking to George, she was surprised and in a good way. She was like surprised at how much skiing. She thought a little bit more because of the presentations and that it would be a little bit more not standing around, but not as much skiing. She was like, they were skiing a lot.
Oh yeah. Yeah. There was a lot of skiing. So basically, and I know you want to get into this stuff in a bit, but like the Onsnow sessions were basically either it's going to be a teaching or a people skill focus, or it's going to be a technical focus. And it was like, here's some input. If it was a tech focus, it was like, you think of our system where we go through wedge turn, wedge Christie, basic parallel, and dynamic parallel. So you could do that overview in 4 runs. And you'd have the group ski wedge turns and show them how we do that and show them what wedge Christie is and stuff like that. But yeah, it was basically like a blurb and then a run top to bottom, Yeah. And what most of the countries did with the teaching skill focus was like they basically modeled their fundamentals by skiing it. So we're like, and if you look at our teaching fundamentals, we have like, you meet somebody and you assess and you evaluate and you set goals. So like that would be the first run. But you'd ski it top to bottom. So very little talking and a lot of skiing.
Yeah. I think that's a cool bring back and, want to pump up because hopefully the PSA Aussie membership, especially the PSA part of it that I ski with and you ski with the most, that top to bottom, maybe a little more skiing, we move.
I think that's a healthy thing to interject into what we do. Yeah. But, and then, it occurs to you part of the way through that most of the people who are presenting in not their native language.
Yeah.
So they don't want to say a whole lot because they're struggling to find the words for basically an English speaking audience. And, so you get the point across and then you move.
Yeah. Which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And what are the logistics for the week? I thought that was pretty interesting. I was curious as to, because I know it was busy, man. There was like stuff and you could see, we had, I think, a 7-hour difference here in the East Coast from you guys, but you could see there was stuff going on. I don't know what your morning was like when the morning started, but definitely stuff went late. I mean, you had demo runs and different things scheduled at night, I think, from different teams. But I mean, how did you know what your whole week was going to be, or were you able to do it day by day, or how did that work?
Yeah, well, let's talk about that 7 hours for a minute, because that you talk about a kick in the teeth. Like, I rolled in there on Saturday, and what I learned Saturday when I rolled in was that was their daylight savings time Saturday, and so we lost another hour of sleep moving into Sunday, of all things. So it went from a 6-hour difference to a 7-hour difference. Yeah. And I'm still recovering from the trip there. But anyway, yeah, the logistics for me, and I think for most of the U.S. delegation was most of us rolled in on Saturday. Sunday was a day to go tour the mountain. So the U.S. delegation was broken basically in half, and half of us went with Porter and the other half went with Jen Simpson. So you get to learn the mountain. And then the structure of the days, Monday through Friday, was all pretty similar. There were Onsnow technical demos that the national teams were doing that started early, like started around 9:00. Some started earlier than that. I think the adaptive started earlier than that on Thursday and so on. But so basically, if you wanted to take full advantage of the day, you would go over to the demo slope a couple minutes before 9. There were announcers on the stage from the countries that were skiing, and they would basically ski what their belief system is, and while their announcer sort of commentated for the crowd. So you could go watch those technical demos from 9 to 9:45, and then there was like an array of fences in the flat area at the bottom where each country had a sign on. So if you were going to go meet, the Australians, for example, you'd roll over to that fence and wait for that clinic to be arranged. But we did 10 to noon was the first session, and then we had lunch from noon to like 1:30. 1:30 to 3:30 was the afternoon Onsnow session. And then at 4:30, there were indoor presentations that happened. And then after that, there was a keynote.
Yeah.
And then dinner. So it went from early to pretty late in the day if you wanted to take all that in. And then there was overlap on the outdoor and indoor sessions. So there's way more offered than you can do.
Yeah.
So in order to arrange like what you wanted to participate in, the Interski folks, like the group the volunteers that coordinated and sort of built the event, used it. I'm looking at it now because I can't remember the name. They use an app called Eventos. And when you register for Eventos, there was a code that got you into the Interski 2023 events. And then you could see all the sessions. And then you just basically went in and registered for what you wanted to participate in. And then you showed up, where you were supposed to be when it took off.
Oh, cool.
It was really, really well organized. Really cool to see it.
Yeah. I definitely got on a couple of the keynotes because those were live stream, which was awesome.
Yes.
And I was listening to those at like 10:30 in the morning here, and I listened to the Slovenian one with the Ski Easy program or Ski Easy project that they're working on. And that was awesome. And Jeb Boyd had kind of clued me into that. He has seen some stuff through his travels, he knew a little bit of what was going on there, what they've been working on in that project, and thought I'd like that. And I jumped on that one and listened to that. That was really, really interesting. Very scientific in terms of how they're applying movements and the kinetics to getting kids and anybody to learn how to ski and what's important through the activities and stuff that they build. That was really cool. Did you see any of that? Or because I don't think you skied with the Slovenians.
No, I didn't ski with them, and I didn't catch that keynote. But like you said, like they're available online, and But when you were talking about the science, and one of the things that was really cool was how most of the teams, what they're presenting is based on science, but because these folks are so polished at presentation, like it doesn't come across like boring in any way, and because of the fact that it's backed up with science and research, there's a confidence like this works and we know why, and here it is. But the keynotes were like that. They're just great presentations.
Oh yeah, and I watched Ann Sherling's, which was killer, man. She just knocked that. She didn't knock it out of the park, man. The ball's still flying. That was really good. It was really neat to her project she's done there with her grad work on gender equality and equity and that, and just the data she had and the research she did to come up with I wouldn't say solutions, but came up with things that move things forward that really can happen in the ski and snowboard world, in teaching world. It was really cool. I think there's going to be a lot more talked about with that one.
At the closing ceremonies on Friday, the Interski committee was giving out awards for, like, for example, the San Marino team from what was formerly the Italian team. There's like some politics there, but I guess Italy didn't want to sponsor the team anymore. So the little landlocked nation of San Marino said that they would sponsor the team. So those people showed up, those skiers and snowboarders, and they are just magical with their enthusiasm. So they were given an award by the committee for their enthusiasm. But Anne was awarded at the end of the end of the show with the big award for her presentation, and it just knocked everybody's socks off. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
So well done. And she's so smart and so polished. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. If we can do anything, I mean, we're begging. We want to have Ann on. I want to have Ann. I know you do to on the podcast. We're with us anytime. And hopefully we can get her on and chat a little bit about stuff, and definitely her grad work in that, because it's hugely important.
Yeah.
It was really neat. I mean, she went right down to the ground level of the ski instructors and how things are assigned and who gets what and how it affects long-term what people do in their psyche. I mean, men and women, it was really cool.
Well, and I mean, I'm on the people skills task force with Ann and skied with her at Academy last year. And just knowing the other pressures that she, as a new mom, she had her baby there, a beautiful little baby. And, and like traveling as a new mom and having the pressure of delivering this keynote and having, the pressure of just coming off of a graduate program and being under the microscope of being on a national team. Like she's pretty superhuman. Like very, very impressive.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be good. And so you said a couple of the teams, the couple of countries, demo teams you ski with in presentations. I mean, tell us a little bit about, and you can go, I don't know, what was the highlight of day one? What was your highlight of day two? I'm interested in what you're bringing back for the teams you skied with, because you skied, I know, with the Australians.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
And
so, well, yeah.
How was that? Are you ready to go to Australia this summer?
I'd love to. and the freaking Australians are so cool. Like, they're so cool. They're just so amicable and chill, and comical, and the greatest expressions on the planet, and this wasn't at Interski. This was 25 years ago at Kirkwood, skiing with this Aussie guy. And one of the people we were skiing with fell and he's like sliding on his face and chest and comes to a stop completely like prone right on, and it goes flat like a lizard drinking. Like, how can you not love skiing with people who say stuff like that? No, but anyway, yeah, like, so Monday morning I went with Australian Tech, and that was led by Tom Langtree, and then Monday afternoon I was with the Australian teaching group, and that was a girl named Angela Pope, who was really excellent. And then that late afternoon, I went to the indoor session with the Germans, who were presenting on guest experience, which was terrific. Tuesday morning, I skied with the Croatian team, and they presented their technical system, like an overview of their beliefs about skiing. Tuesday afternoon was Canadian Tech. And then Thursday, early evening, I went to the indoor presentation that Jeff Marks did as the Alpine coach for the Canadian team. And holy cow, Jeff has been on our show. Just an unbelievably great presentation. He is so good at it, and I asked him about coming back on to our show to talk about that presentation he did, and he agreed to do that. And it was just, it's inspiring to see somebody that good present.
I got so much stuff from those guys, Jeff and Perry, and Jeff was sending most of it out. They were doing those 60-second shots, but they were doing stuff that they were pulling not just from their team. They were pulling, I mean, they had Maddie on there. She had Matt Boyd spoke with Jeff and did one of those little 60-second shots and they were putting so much stuff out of what was going on. And Jeff got an award. You spoke about the awards. I mean, he got the collaboration award, right, which is pretty cool. I mean, I think as I talked to you and I listened to George Thomas talk to a bunch of you that were over there, talked to Kathy and talked to, Maureen and Tina, as I said, and some other folks, you could hear the cool thing is, I think almost the piece that's hard to tangibly bring home is that collaboration piece, that just how you interacted and how you guys worked together and shared information. I mean, you can bring it home and do that, but it's pretty hard to come home and talk about that or to like do a program on that, isn't it?
I suspect it's hard to really, and I'm sort of speculating as an outsider because I'm not in those conversations with those people. But when you see the Americans, the Australians, and the Canadians present, for example, about teaching, there's so much overlap. But like Richard Jameson teaches with Michael and Robin at Heavenly, so like that that connection is obvious. And we at National Academy last year, we skied with Perry from Canada for 2 days. So like the involvement is, there's a lot of commingling on those three teams, the States, the Australians, and the Canadians. So the collaboration happens. And I have to imagine from their perspective, it's like when you sit in a meeting and can't remember who came up with the great idea, but that's where you all start heading anyway. And like it's evident that they all work together,
Yeah.
But anyway, back to your on Wednesday morning. Wednesday was a half day. Wednesday afternoon was free, but Wednesday morning I went with the Swiss team and their technical presentation, and got to ski with Kelly Weibel, who has been on our show and who is just an absolute like Instagram sensation with 90,000 followers or something like that. But so cool to get to meet him in person and hang out for a couple hours and ski. And then Jesus, like you watch him ski on Instagram, that's one thing. But like when you can hear the snow screaming underneath his skis, that's just a totally different thing. And you see how fast he went, and then how fast, like you don't go that fast when you're skiing the same pitch. It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Thursday morning was, I went with the Austrians. They did a bump, their beliefs about bumps. And I got to ski that morning with Eliza Kuntz, who's our national CEO. We kind of palled around that morning, and it was a lot of fun skiing with her. That afternoon on Thursday, I went with the Czechs, and they were doing a presentation on mirror neurons, which is pretty heavy duty science. There's the long and short of it is we have a collection of nerve cells in the front of our brain that we share with at least chimpanzees and birds. And that cluster of nerves gives us the ability to copy and mimic and mirror what other members of our species do. So it's like maybe you watch somebody hit their thumb with a hammer and you make a face, that kind of and I'm going to say the word telepathy. I'm not trying to make it weird, but there's a lot of stuff that happens, outside or underneath of our sensory awareness that we react to, with mirror neurons. And then we have a brain structure called the amygdala that like anybody can go on and read about. But like these folks are starting to look into that science and how it can make us better at getting people to progress through being good skiers. So I went with them on Thursday afternoon, and my partner was Angela from Monday afternoon, the Australian teaching session. And we had a great time skiing together and mimicking each other. And then that late afternoon indoor session, I went to the Czech session, and they had videoed us in the afternoon, and they were putting the videos up on screen. So like they would show me following Angela and vice versa, and how our arms were exactly the same at the same part of the turn, and how our, the angles of our shins matched, even though that wasn't necessarily the focus. But, we were directed to watch her and do exactly what she does, but no particular body part. But when you see the way our bodies were doing what each other's body was doing, it was really something. And what they're trying to do with that is to figure out how to use that reality of how our brains work to make us better at teaching our students, and it's
cool.
heavy.
The science, man. It's cool to see those little things. You said it, the science. I mean, every team's using some kind of scientific something to try to put things forward. And that's where it's cool. They get together and share that, what each of them are trying to do. Yeah.
And the Lithuanians are doing the same thing the Czechs are doing. And there's a little bit of overlap between those two teams. I think there was some, I'll use the word politics. This just comes from discussions with the Czech team members that some of the folks who are now on the Lithuanian team used to be on the Czech team, but wanted to go this direction a little faster than the Czech organization was willing to go. So they sort of branched off, but there's overlap in their work. And there was nothing but good feelings between the two countries. Like it's all good. But, so both of those countries presented that. And then Friday morning, I went with the German team, and they were presenting on mindfulness, which also overlapped into that introspection, introspection kind of realm, which is like tied directly into our people skills.
Yeah.
So it was neat to see how they were approaching connecting with people, having been on the people skills task force and knowing that topic pretty well, where they're coming from. So I think there's some potential there to sort of follow their footsteps and integrate some of that into what we're doing. And then Friday afternoon was my last Onsnow session. I wanted to go with some U.S. Onsnow session just to see the presentation. So I ended up going with Ryan Christofferson for his freestyle session, and it was a hoot. It was a hoot. He did a great job with, obviously great skiing and beautiful demos and just a lot of comedy. And, it just had that American, and Ryan's like a total California dude, but he just had that American casualness that I didn't see really from the other teams, not that he's not a complete professional, but he made us all laugh, man. And it was like, this is really fun, so I really enjoyed skiing with him.
Yeah, your T-bar talk with him was fun, man. With him, you had him and Jordan on the T-bar talk, so that was cool on the Instagram.
Right,
that was cool. Yeah. The old T-bar. Andrea was like, she hasn't ridden a T-bar, so she's like, "Oh, 2 people riding the T-bar." I'm like, "Yes, 2 people." J-bar is 1.
I think I said this on a previous podcast that I would never ride a T-bar again with Troy Walsh just because of our height difference. And the last T-bar I rode with Troy was at the National Academy at Breckenridge, and it's that T-bar that kind of bends the corner. And we bent the corner, and Troy was on the inside, and I was on the outside, and the T-bar's on his ass, but it's up in my armpit. And he's like laughing, "What's going on over there?" But anyway, I end up riding a T-bar with Troy again, but this time it was a little less eventful because it was a straight shot.
There you go. No turns in it.
Didn't go around. Yeah.
So what's Angelo Ross, the skier, bringing home himself? What's something? Is there one thing or kind of a theme you're bringing home as the skier? You personally, the skier, not the. You may share it, but it's more like you wanted to put it into your own skiing.
Mm-hmm. Well, my barometer on speed and accuracy has been recalibrated for sure. Like when any sport you do, whether it's mountain biking or skateboarding or skiing or, cross country skiing or road biking or whatever it is, if you want to get good, you follow somebody who's better than you, which probably ties into the mirror neuron thing that the Czechs and the Lithuanians are doing. Right. Right. But yeah, you can't ski with 25 national teamers from around the planet and not recalibrate your understanding of speed and accuracy. So that for sure was a big change. But then, it's funny because I get feedback from my coaches and things here. And I was just sort of eavesdropping on a conversation that Kevin Jordan was having with somebody he was partnered with in one of the sessions where we were both participants. And I heard him explain something in a particular way that I've been working on, and he drew a little thing in the snow and the way he was standing, and I'm looking at him and I'm like, oh my God. And it totally clicked for me. So I started integrating some of those changes into my skiing on Thursday after I overheard him say it. So it was wild. Harold and I went out to dinner with Emily Spiker and Debbie Moore on Saturday night, and they're both really enthusiastic members and work at Whitetail in Pennsylvania, and talking about our takeaways from the event. They're like, and Harold and I obviously both had takeaways from it. And sometimes people's perspective is if you're an examiner or you're on ed staff or whatever, there's no room for improvement. But they were kind of relieved to hear that we were also making changes to not only our skiing, but also I'm going to integrate some of this stuff into my teaching, and so, yeah, if you're paying attention at all, it's impossible to not come away without some kind of change to what you do.
What's the one thing you're bringing home is that which I know you're bringing more than one. So people going, Angelo, it's only bringing one. No, but what's the one thing that like really is the top of the list in the teaching educator? I mean, you've been that forever, and that's just even not even that you taught for 20 years in the public school. It's like you just love the learning parts more to me. I mean, that whole learning, exploring, and getting people in that learning mode. Like, what's something you're bringing home that you got from Interski? You're going, this is cool.
I honestly, I mean, I hope this doesn't come across as crass, but excuse me, I felt really validated in what we do. Cool. I think in terms of technical skiing, like when the Austrians and the Swiss, man, like they ski in the womb, and like their technical demos and their show demos were amazing. And the Japanese, the precision and the speed and the accuracy of the Japanese team, there's no question when you look at those teams that there's room for growth in technical skiing. You know what I mean? Yeah. But when it came to the teaching and the people skills, it was more of a validation that what we've done for the past 5-10 years, what the teaching skills task force is doing, what the people skills task force is doing, excuse me, the other countries from around the world are absolutely watching us and trying to do that. And so it was more of a validation and a confidence builder. And it's like, all right, full speed ahead. Like how good at this can we get, you know, in terms of just like interpersonal skills and adult learning theory. And we're very good at teaching kids, but I think adult learning theory is something that's not as fleshed out or as applied in what we do as teaching kids is. Kids obviously an important and a large demographic, but we teach a lot of adults too. So I think it was my teaching takeaway is like what we're doing is really good, and we should continue to do it and get better at it. You know, cool.
I like that. So, everybody makes some connections at any event we go to. Usually if they don't, it's like, what were you doing? I mean, that's one of the cool things I think about going to these events. You hear people that get to go to National Academy, even those that go to Masters Academy, the connections they make with the people they ski with in their group separate of the person leading it. But I mean, what are some of the connections? Were there some connections you made with folks that you'll keep going that might have been in your group? Like you were talking about Angela, that was with you when you were with the Czechs and that.
Well, yeah. I mean, you end up like probably accidentally seeing these same people over and over again in your group, you know? So I ended up skating with a kid from the 35 years old. From the Swedish national team, Eric, who was really great. We ended up in like 3 or 4 sessions together, and met one of those kids and he is a kid, he's in his 20s, from San Marino, named Yuri Nicolucci, who is just an absolute sweetheart of a human being and like an ear to ear smile all the time. And I ran into him in the airport. We were on the same flight out of Kittila on the way back to Helsinki at the end of the event, and everybody's groggy and tired, and you make eye contact, and he just comes over and like gives you a hug and great meeting you. Hope to see you in 4 years at the next one. And then you hook up on social media and you follow each other on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. And yeah, I mean, you just make these connections with these people. And I think, you know, what eases the transition is the fact that you're all there for the same thing, just to have good time on skis, you know, or snowboard. Yeah. You know, so yeah, you totally excellent meeting people.
Yeah. And the curiousness, the willingness to explore seems to be huge, because you listen to all the different countries and they're there to show kind of their stuff in terms of what they believe in and that, but they're also, from everything I saw online, everything you hear and read and talk to, the videos I see, you know, all the countries' team members are looking to see what other countries are doing. Mm-hmm. You know, they're really looking to explore, and, you know, maybe some of that's to kind of set the barometer of where everybody fits in and how they're doing. But there definitely seems to be a lot of, I want to learn.
Well, yeah, absolutely. There is. And then what was cool, like from the technical aspect, like one of my takeaways was, when you see the way a country presents their beliefs about technical skiing, it's like our exam process. When a candidate comes to one of our exams, what they're basically there to do is to demonstrate an understanding of a curriculum. But you can't demonstrate an entire curriculum in a one-day skiing exam. So we look at the center line. Like, we want to look at wedge turns, we want to look at wedge Christie, open parallel, dynamic parallel, right? And then we might modify one of those. We might change the shape of the dynamic turns or whatever. But when you go to a presentation with a country like Croatia, as an example, the Croatian movement pattern is pretty different from ours. And they have a really, really big vertical upward movement in their wedge turns, and in transition and wedge turns, they almost come to standing, like almost come to vertical. And then throughout the body of the turn, really settle down with a strong flexing movement onto the outside ski. It almost looks like an Arlberg kind of a turn, and then you start to say, well, look at their high end skiing. Look how good they are at high end. So they've arrived at this really, really refined dynamic skiing with a movement pattern that's basically the opposite of ours. So then you start to say, well, where's the overlap happen? Yeah. And then what really struck me was when you get to like the second phase of their technical progression, where we call it wedge Christie, and we think in terms of wedge Christie. And so our brain, the American brain, starts that turn in a wedge and then finishes it with parallel skis. They call that piece of their development parallel wedge, parallel - wedge. And so they come at that from the opposite movement pattern. They start in a parallel traverse, which is, parallel skis, and then they do that upward move and then settle down onto the outside ski to complete it in a wedge. And when I see that, and I say, well, so Americans think in wedge Christie and they think in parallel wedge, those are presumably opposite. But it really just depends on how you draw the turn on the snow, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We have a tendency when we use our Onsnow chalkboard, we start in transition and we draw 3 phases of the turn and end with the next transition, right? And then we draw the next turn. So we basically draw C's. They draw fall line to fall line.
Yeah.
So is it really the opposite, or are they just like looking at it from halfway through where we start to look at it, But then I'm curious how that affects how their members think about skiing. Because, when you see a really contrived wedge Christie, it's very obvious. Now I'm wedging, and then here comes the foot. Like, now I'm parallel. Like, I wonder if their people do the same thing, but they go, well, here I am parallel, and then whoop, here comes this big wedge. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The things we see in exams when people are contriving a move, like, do they see it too, but just the opposite way?
Right.
Because what
is he doing?
Right? Because what it boils down to is like there just aren't that many ways the human body can move. And it was really cool to watch the Austrian bump progression. They do a thing they call it a turn and a half. And this is part of their national like bump curriculum, which they have. Like, this is how you teach bumps, right? You start with this and go to this and go to this and this, and that's how they teach it all across Austria, right? But they do this thing where they traverse and then they retract. They do like a retraction move to initiate this turn. And then they do another complete retraction turn with a pole plant. So traverse, retract, and turn, and then do another turn, but with a pole plant. And they do that the whole way down the hill. That's to teach people how to shorten their legs to, eventually start to absorb a bump. But that's not how they ski. Like, when you watch them ski, they lengthen the outside leg the same way we do. But they've got the versatility in their curriculum to say, all right, well, this is a special case. This is bump skiing. So we need to make a big deal out of this pole plant. We need to make a big deal out of these legs getting shorter. So you have the ability to take these moves that are sort of outside the center line, but they have applicability in certain situations the same way we do, you know, like we have an obvious center line that gets us to dynamic skiing, but that doesn't mean that retraction turns aren't important.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that hop turns aren't important, you know, but all the countries understand that those things all have applicability in different situations. And so in order to be a really rounded skier, you've got to be able to do them all. And in order to be a really rounded ski instructor, you've got to be able to do them all and demonstrate them all and like teach people how to get there, you know, and that's just common. Cool. That was a common thread through the whole event.
Yeah. So, obviously we have the podcast, so you get to share all kinds of stuff like we just did for the last 45 minutes, an hour here on Angelo's experience at Interski. And I guarantee there'll be more and more coming out. So you have, you know, the platform of the podcast here to share that stuff. But, you know, I'd asked you, like, I'm curious as to, you know, how you'll share this information. Like, I know some of it will be probably put into your teaching. Some of it will just blend in, but like, and I asked that and it wasn't in the initial kind of thought that I said to you, but I'm curious, like, do you hope people come up and ask you about your experience?
I hope they do. And some people already have, like people from my home mountain have asked me to do a little presentation for our staff. But I have a, you know, as a former science teacher, I have an interest in I was a biology teacher, so I have an interest in the biology, the mirror neurons and the mindfulness stuff from the Czechs, the Lithuanians, and the Germans really struck me. And I have sort of a rough draft right now of an article in mind that I would like to write as a member of the National People Skills Task Force that will integrate in a very real way what the People Skills Task Force has done and what the Teaching Skills Task Force has done. That connection, when those folks started to present it, and I the presentations I saw didn't explicitly make that connection, but that's just like a personal interest I have. So I think I'm going to spend some time looking into that and probably come out with an article about that. There's an obvious intuitive overlap between people skills and teaching. This connection is the real deal. Like, this is why they're connected. And I'd like to be able to explain that in a way that makes sense, in a concise way that's backed up with some science, you know. And so that's how I intend to share, that part of it moving forward.
That's cool. Yeah, because I ask, because, you know, a lot of people talk about, you know, well, the team goes there and some of our members go there. Some of our ed staff goes as, you know, on their own, like you did, and Harold and Tina and Sue and Maureen and who else? I don't know. Chris Saylor was there. I saw. Pam Green was there. Yep, Pam was there. You know, so, and I'm definitely missing some others that. But I think everybody brings it back in a different way. You can't expect each person to come back. And I think there's different ways. And one way is, if you know they went, is just ask them what their experience, or ask them who they skied with, you know, and what hit home with them. I think there's a lot that can be shared without, you know, because I know you like to write and you got the podcast here. And I think everybody that'll come back will have things that I don't even know they're sharing when they're doing it. Just some things you put into your kind of repertoire, or like you said, some things just confirmed. Right. For you, you know, really said, you know, I'm on the right path here, which is cool.
Yeah. And it's important. And, you know, as the education chair for the East, like we're in the process now as we get on the other side of National Academy and we start to meet as an education committee for the Eastern region of the US. One of the things we're going to do is look at, the existing curriculum, the events calendar. What do we want to keep? What do we want to change? And what do we want to add? So we are in a position to add events to next year's event calendar for our membership that will flesh some of this stuff out. But like what's so important for membership to realize is that, and hopefully this podcast can help in some small way, is that there is a direct link between this Interski event that only happens every 4 years and the events that our members can sign up for to update their certification. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. It doesn't come out of nowhere, and it certainly just doesn't come out of the US. It's a global effort, and seeing what these other teams are doing and pushing them and they push us, and then we all get better because of that. It's really exciting to realize how directly connected you are to a global community of snow sports instructors.
Yeah, it's cool. Oh, well, wish they could have been there. You got to wait 4 years to try to go next time.
Right. Yep. Yep. And nobody we don't know where it'll be yet. But come December, We're supposed to know where that next Interski event will be. Interski.
Yeah, where they put bids in, or everything goes in as bids or something in the summer, I think, and then it comes out in the fall or something like that. September it goes in or something.
There's a process, and it involves in each country. It involves the resort that wants to host it, and then the certifying agency. So, like for us, it would be, like theoretically, hypothetically, it would be some resort, and then they would contact PSIA and say, let's host it here. And then together they work to put in a bid. And then the international group looks at that and chooses.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you went, man. It was fun.
I'd love to have it in North America, so I don't have to do like 65 hours of travel again.
Dude, that was a long way. It was hearing everybody though. It was, oh my, and I think Brian and Alex Smith got stuck in Helsinki on the way home. They missed some connector right away when they were coming out and getting into, and yeah, I think they were there for quite a while. Well,
and when you talk to the Australian team, and they're on like a 30-hour plane ride.
Yeah.
Or you talk to the folks from like Chile or Argentina, like they literally traveled like the entire planet.
Yeah, geez.
That's pretty far.
And then Sweden, I saw something on Facebook. They flew in a second bus driver, so yeah, they could just drive straight through. They went, I think it was 140 miles on the bus. They rode the bus 140 miles to get home. Well,
and some of the Czechoslovakians drove. I talked to the one girl from Czechoslovakia who presented the indoor session, and they drove. It was a 4-day drive, but they had plans to stop on the way and ski and see different sites. It's like you and me driving if we drove to Utah.
Yeah.
That's them driving to Finland. So,
jeez. Mm-hmm. But no, I think the coolest thing for me was just seeing the excitement for skiing and snowboarding education. And you could see in everybody that went, the posts, the text I would get, the back and forth during the week. Yeah. Glad I had my phone on, I have the do not disturb. Because you guys definitely had fun at certain times of the day, and it was like, but it was neat. It's neat to see that excitement. I think that's one of the takeaways. I hope that people, if they paid attention to what was going on Facebook and the Instagram and that, it's just the excitement, because I think it puts an energy into our team, our organization, and just into teaching skiing and snowboarding that, that's a takeaway in itself. Just the group coming back with the energy that they coming back with. I mean, you could see the amount of fun that everyone was having, which is cool. Well, geeking out. I think Kim Sievers posted to somebody, I think it might have been to Pam Green, if you want to truly geek out on skiing and riding education, you go to Interski, because it's the most geeky you can get in terms of just doing all the facets of what we do.
Well, and don't fool yourself either. If you want to rip, you got to Interski, because there is some ripping skiing and snowboarding. Yeah. And it was funny. Like, I'd call Amanda when I was ready to go to bed, I'd call her, but it was only like 3:00 in the afternoon here.
Yeah.
And I'd get a full night's sleep and call her when I woke up, and she was getting ready to go to bed. So that was wild. But I do want to say this, because I just thought this was such a class move, and this was really special. The American team for the demos, like on the demo slope, when the whole team skied down, how special that was, and the one team vibe coming through. So you watch Krill and the adaptive crew like leading the charge. And then you just saw this mob of alpine skiers and snowboarders and tele skiers just integrated. They took up the entire width and length of that slope. And then some of them were hitting the jump, and some of them were synchroing. And it was an absolute party coming down the hill. But it was so easy to miss our 3 cross-country team members on Looker's left, kicking straight up the slope.
Yeah.
And they're kicking up, and they're kicking up, and they're kicking up, and you're like going, Mike, they're flying up the hill, Emily and Zeke and Tully, and they're just flying up the left side along this B-net. But as soon as the last Alpiners pass them, they drop in on the slope, and they're making telly turns down the hill, like on skate skis, right?
Yeah.
and Tully's doing it switch, right? Coming down on their Nordics to be the last visual on the hill was the Nordic skiing, just as a nod to the roots of Nordic skiing in the Scandinavian countries. And it was just a beautiful class act to see. I don't know whose idea that was to like just take a nod, just nod to the Scandinavian countries, but what a beautiful thing to do. So whoever thought of that, kudos to them, because what a classy move that was.
Yeah, that was cool. Yeah, and I did see some of that because you had you could see the demo here with the live stream. Mm-hmm. So you could catch quite a bit of the skiing coming down. It was pretty wild. What was the team that had it? They were all lit up.
Croatia, man.
Croatia.
And if you can catch a glimpse of their uniforms in daylight, they had the most outrageous uniforms. Their jacket was it looked like a comic book graphic.
Yeah.
It was a woman's face on the left side, and then all like Blammo, the old Batman comics and whatnot. But so their jacket looked like a comic book, and their ski pants looked like jeans, but they were ski pants, and they were just tricked out.
That's cool, man.
The other thing they had, because of their big up move in the top of that turn, their poles were about as long as I am high. And I was thinking of Dave Wynn the whole time, so I called him when I got home. I said, "You should have seen how long the Croatians' poles were." He said, "Tell them 66% of their height." I said, "I don't think that's going to work for them."
Okay, coach. Yeah, he's going to be measuring all our poles, man. I'm glad I'm at 66%. I might be at 65%, so I'm probably okay. He'll probably tell me I'm too short now. Right. But what do you do? But hey, it's been awesome, and I know you and I will talk more about this, and things will come up during the podcast. But hopefully, we'll have maybe we can catch a hold of Ann, and it'd be great to have Ann Sherling on here in the next month. And then I think we're going to try to connect and definitely have Kathy Brennan, our Eastern Region CEO, who was there, hopefully on in the next 2 weeks here. We'll try to get a hold of Kathy and record one maybe next week and get it up then or right after that as you head into National Academy, because you're going west.
Going west, yep.
There you go. Cool. Hey, thanks to all our friends out there that listen. And hopefully, if you're loving the podcast, give it a like, subscribe on YouTube. It helps let our sponsors and friends know the podcast that help us out to keep us going here, because Blizzard Technica has been super helpful and supportive of Angelo and I on and off the snow, and also Nick's Boot Fitting. Nick and his crew over at Mount Snow and Nick's Boot Fitting have been phenomenal. And of course, we have Miles from Rollerblade, Miles Cotter Sparrow, we're kind of joining up a little bit. Another friend of the podcast sponsor here that we're going to be working with a little bit to go rollerblading, man. Keep those legs in motion. And it's very close to Angelo's gig on the skateboard, but he does like the four wheels of the skateboard.
Yeah, I'm a little biased there.
I don't blame you. You've been doing that a long time. But hey, thanks everybody. And this has been The Fall Line with Chaos and Company.